At the end of last year, a letter arrived at my office. It was addressed personally to me. I work at a publishing house. Inside was a request. The author wanted me to read and edit his essay, and he also asked if I would give him private lessons in creative writing. I figured he must have seen my name in the credits of some book, but the whole situation felt off. With a bit of hesitation, I wrote back. I told him that if he sent over a manuscript, I'd read it, but I simply didn't have the time for one-on-one tutoring. The next day, I got a call from a delivery service courier. He told me that he couldn't find the recipient at the address I had provided. The phrasing seemed strange to me, and when I pressed for details, it turned out that the address led to a prison somewhere in the northern Kanto region. I had simply copied the address from the return envelope included in the original letter. Stunned by this turn of events, I typed the sender's name into a search engine. It turned out he was a man arrested for inflicting grievous bodily harm. According to the internet, he had indeed served time there, but he had been released a long time ago. My first instinct was that this was some kind of sick joke. If he'd been in prison for 3 years and wasn't at home, his parents wouldn't have filed a missing persons report. And even if he had been locked up without them knowing, the police would have seen his status immediately upon taking a report. Was it a different person with the same name, or was something else going on? I wavered between wanting to drop the whole thing and a desperate urge to know the truth. Ultimately, I decided to call the number provided in the letter. It was a landline, and the area code matched the sender's address. The tone of the letter, which appeared to be written by his mother, didn't feel fake. I wanted to clarify 3 things. Had their son actually been in prison for assault? If so, when was he released? And did they know where he'd been for the last 3 years? Had he ever been interested in literature? The questions were intrusive, but I was already in too deep and wanted to understand. As expected, an elderly woman answered. I laid out my questions. Kenji is such a quiet boy, she said. He wouldn't hurt a fly. What violence? I said 3 years, but it was 3 years ago that we first noticed he was gone. He used to spend all his time shut away in his room, a hikikomori. But then he stopped touching the food I left outside his door. It had happened before, but that time it went on for too long. I explained the situation and apologized for the heavy questions, but her voice was becoming increasingly hysterical. I apologized again, told her I also wanted to find the truth, and we agreed that I would visit so she could look at the letter and confirm the handwriting. Since the address was in Tokyo, I headed there the following Saturday. A woman in her early 40s opened the door. She looked completely ordinary, which didn't match the hysterical voice I'd heard over the phone at all. I was led into the living room and showed her the letter. This is Kenji's handwriting, she said. But why is the prison address on the envelope? I don't understand. He's a quiet boy. It couldn't be him. According to her, after finishing school, Kenji became a total recluse. He was quiet and kind, but deathly afraid of people. He wouldn't even let his mother into his room. His age, in his late 20s, matched the data of the prisoner I'd found, but I didn't mention it. You're from the media, right? Can't you find him? She pleaded, her eyes suddenly wide and staring. Please, let me meet him and apologize, I beg you. I clarified that I could do no more than any average person, but I promised to contact her if I learned anything. Could I take a look at Kenji's room? I asked cautiously. I was hoping to find other writings to compare the handwriting or find some kind of lead. She hesitated for a moment. Yes. All right. Just please, don't tell Kenji. With those words, she led me to the 2nd floor. There were 3 doors, all closed, and the hallway was dim. I was led to the room at the very end. Inside, there was only an old chest of drawers and a built-in oshier, a traditional deep closet. Nothing else. It wasn't what you'd expect from the room of a recluse. There was no computer, no piles of books. Is this Kenji-san's room? I couldn't help but ask. No. Here. In here. She pointed at the closet. At that moment, a chill ran through me. When she slid the door open, I almost screamed. His room wasn't even the closet itself. The entire interior was plastered with ofuda. Buddhist prayer charms used to ward off spirits. The blood drained from my face. While I stood behind her, staring at it in horror, she whispered, "There, in the attic." That was his favorite room. She shone a flashlight on the ceiling of the closet and pushed aside one of the panels. The ofuda charm that had been pasted over the seam was torn. "Please." She gestured for me to look inside. Every instinct told me to run, but my mind seemed to shut down. I couldn't process what was happening. In a trance-like state, I climbed into the closet and poked my head through the hole in the ceiling. There was a tiny window in the attic. It seemed someone really had lived up there. It was dark, but I could make out the surroundings. Suddenly, I felt like something moved behind me. I spun around. Nothing. The mother was still standing outside the closet. I don't have a sixth sense, so I blamed it on a hallucination brought on by fear, but I couldn't stop shaking. Driven by some inexplicable urge, I crawled all the way into this room. I looked around. I remember seeing old-school textbooks, a teddy bear, some kind of foreign-looking doll, and a few volumes of manga. Everything was just lying on the floor. No desk, no chair, no furniture, and none of the manuscripts I was looking for. Suddenly, a massive headache and a wave of nausea hit me. Everything here was wrong. This woman was not sane. I genuinely feared she was going to scream and lunge at me from behind. I couldn't bear being in that crawl space for another second. I mumbled some words of thanks and started sliding the ceiling panel back into place. My hand slipped and the board went in crooked. That's when I saw the top side, the side that faced into the attic. It didn't have a wood grain pattern. It was covered in grooves. They looked like they were made by fingernails, or perhaps a blade, but they were too uneven and shallow. Just chaotic, desperate scratches. I felt like I was going to throw up and struggled to swallow it down. "Thank you for your time," I said. I should have said, "I'll let you know if I find anything," but I couldn't bring myself to speak the words. On the first floor, all the other doors were closed. The living room where we'd sat looked like it had been converted from 2 rooms, but a heavy accordion curtain was drawn tight across the middle, so I never saw the other half of the hall. I went home that day, got drunk, and passed out immediately. Nothing was resolved, and that house was full of things that didn't make sense, but I am never going back there. This happened in December of last year, and I'm still terrified. In January, a letter came from her. It wasn't a New Year's greeting, but an invitation to come over again and talk about the future. She added a story about how Kenji had been bullied in his 3rd year of middle school. But on New Year's Day, the whole family gathered. They talked. He cheered up, and he was able to graduate. Because of that, she said, January was her favorite month. I lied in my reply, telling her I was being transferred to a different branch for work and could no longer help her. I haven't heard from her since. I deeply regret giving her my business card. Now, whenever I'm walking down the street, I'm constantly looking over my shoulder.